So today's lesson is 12-3, which is distance on the coordinate plane. So first thing you're going to do for your warm-up is you're going to watch this video called Coordinate Plane Word Problem Examples. That is in Khan, and it's listed in your assignment list. And make sure also that you write down your homework for tonight. So today we're going to find the horizontal and vertical distances. Now it says, if 2 points on the coordinate plane have the same y-coordinates, you can find the horizontal distance between them by finding the absolute value, so find the absolute value of the difference between the x-coordinates, okay? Okay, so I highlight it differently. So here, let's say we have the points -5, 4 and -1, 4. They have the same y-coordinates, see, -4, -4. So in order for us to find the distance between those 2 points is we're going to find the difference, which means we're going to subtract the absolute value of the x values. So here we have the absolute values. You can do, I like to, well, let's just do it this way. So we have -1 plus 5. So the absolute value of that, you want the absolute value of -1 plus 5. -1 plus 5, of course, is 4. And the absolute value of 4 is 4. So that means that the distance between those 2 points is 4 units. Now, if you have a graph, of course, you know you can just count the points. You can count the units. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. And our calculations were correct. Now, this is how I like to show the work. Okay? Now, when we're looking for the distance between 2 points that are in the same quadrant, we're going to subtract. Okay? So these 2 points are in the same quadrant, they're both in the third quadrant, so we are going to subtract the absolute values. Okay? Make sure, let's write that down. So I like to write the ordered pairs of each of the points, one on top of each other. So we've got -5, -4, and we've got -1, -4. So you can see that this is x, y, okay? You can see that the y values are the same. So we are not going to use the y values to calculate. We are going to use the x values. And because we are in the same quadrant, we're going to subtract the absolute values. So we have the absolute value of -5 minus the absolute value of -1. So that's going to be 5 minus 1, which is 4, which is what we originally calculated. So this is 4 units apart. So for example 1, we're going to find the horizontal distance between the 2 points. Now, of course, you know you can just count because you have a graph. See, so this is going to be 1, 2, 3 units. So let's see if we are correct. I mean, in our calculations, I mean. So for the first thing you want to do, is you want to find what the actual ordered pairs are. So for k, this is -2, 1. That's -2, 1. And L is 1, 1. Okay. So now you can see that we have 2 points and they are not in the same quadrants. So if they're not in the same quadrant, that means we want this distance and we want to add that to this distance. So if we're in different quadrants, we are adding the absolute values. Let's write that down. So different quadrants, we add the absolute values. And again, you guys, I like to write the ordered pairs one atop each other, okay? So here we've got -2, 1, and we have 1, comma 1. So here, this is x comma y, and you can see that the y values are the same. Since the y values are the same, again, remember, we're not using that for our calculations. We're not using this, we're using the x values. And we want to add the absolute values. So we have the absolute value of -2 plus the absolute value of 1. So that's 2 plus 1, which is 3. So those 2 points, K and L, are 3 units apart. So I want you to take 2 minutes with your table partners to work on problem B. It says points U and V are plotted on the coordinate plane shown. We want to find the horizontal distance between points U and V. And I want you to find those points using your calculations. Don't just count the boxes, okay? Use your calculations. So the first thing you want to do is you want to write the ordered pairs for each of those points, okay? So U is at 1, comma, -3, and V is at 4, comma, -3. Now, you can see that the ordered pairs are in the same quadrant. So if we're in the same quadrant, we want to subtract the ordered pairs. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Subtract the absolute value. Okay, so let me fix that. So we want to subtract the absolute value. So again, you'll see that the y values are the same. Since the y values are the same, we're going to use the x values to calculate. So we're not using the y values. And we said we want to subtract the absolute values. So we want the absolute value of 4 minus the absolute value of 1. So that's 4 minus 1, which is 3 units apart. And then you can see here, 1, 2, 3 units apart. So now we're talking vertical distance, okay? It says if 2 points on the coordinate plane have the same x coordinates, you can find the vertical distance between the 2 of them by finding the absolute value of the difference between the y coordinates. And again, if the x coordinates are the same, we calculate with the y values. Okay, just the opposite of what we did with the horizontal distance. Okay, so here we've got 2 ordered pairs. We've got 2, comma 1 and 2, comma -4. So you can see that the x values are the same. So that means we're going to use the y values. We're going to use the y values to calculate. Now, these 2 points are in different quadrants. So if we are in different quadrants, what are we going to do? Different quadrants, we want to add the absolute values. Okay, so we've got the absolute value of 1. I'm going to write it up here. So the absolute value of 1. So we have the absolute value of 1 plus the absolute value of -4. That's 1 plus 4, which is 5 units. So let's take a look over here. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units apart. Good, we were correct. So, for example 2, we want to find vertical distance between 2 points. Now this time, you'll notice there is no graph. So we're going to use our ordered pairs, okay? So the first thing I like to do, so for example A, it says find the vertical distance between point C, which is at -1, -5, and point D, which is -1, -3. So we're going to put the two ordered pairs one atop each other. So if we got C, which is at -1, -5, and D, which is at -1, -3. Now, again, you guys, I like to put the x comma y up top so that we can stay straight. Okay. So, which ones are the same? The x values are the same. So that means we are not using those for calculations. We are using the ones that are different. Now, do we add or subtract? We have to figure out, are we in the same quadrant or in different quadrants? Well, this is how you do it. You just sketch a little thing over here, and this says negative, comma, negative. So that means that we're going negative to the left, negative down. So C is down here somewhere. Then we've got D at negative, comma, negative. So this is negative, comma, negative. D is down here somewhere. So we are in the same quadrant. So if we are in the same quadrant, we will subtract the absolute values. Okay, so here's the work. So I'll write it in black. So we have the absolute value of -5 minus the absolute value of -3. So that's going to be 5 minus 3, which is 2 units apart. And that's it. So I would like for you to do with your table partners example B. So we want to find the vertical distance between points E, which is at 2, 4, and F, which is at 2, -2. So once again, I like to put the ordered pairs one on top of the other. So x, y. So E is at 2, 4, and F is at 2, -2. Now, again, if you look here, the x values are the same. So that means we are not using that to calculate. We are using the y values. Now, we have to figure out, are we in the same quadrant or are we in different quadrants? So again, this is how we do it. So we're going to write, just sketch a graph, and then look, we've got 2, 4. That's positive to the right and positive up. So E is in quadrant 1. And then we've got F at +2, -2. So that means F is in the 4th quadrant. So we are in different quadrants, so that means we want to subtract. Okay, make sure you write that down. So different quadrants, we want to, we want to add, not subtract. We want to add the absolute value. Good catch. So we want to add the absolute values. So here we've got the absolute value of 4 plus the absolute value of -2. So that's 4 plus 2, which is 6 units. So point E and F are 6 units apart. All right, example 3 is distance between points. It says here, Anna and her grandmother live at the locations shown on the coordinate plane. If each square on the coordinate plane represents 1.5 miles, how far apart do they live? So this one has an extra step, okay? So first we want to, let's see, highlight our important information here. We know that each square on the coordinate plane represents 1.5 miles, okay? So the first thing we want to do is find out how far apart are they on the coordinate grid, okay? How many units away? So let's see here. First thing we want to do is write down our ordered pairs. So Anna, let's use A for Anna, is at -3, comma, +3. So A is at -3, comma, +3. And then grandma, let's use G for grandma. That's 4, comma, +3. 4, comma, +3. And again, this first one is the X, second one is the Y, okay? So, which one is the same? The Y value is the same. So that means we're going to use the X value to calculate, okay? Now, are we in the same quadrant or are we in different quadrants? If you look here, we're in different quadrants. So that means because we're in different quadrants, we're going to add the absolute values. We're going to add the absolute values. So here's our calculations. So we've got the absolute value of -3 plus the absolute value of 4. So that's going to be 3 plus 4, which is 7 units. So on the graph, they are 7 units apart, okay? Now, I know that you had the graph, and of course you could just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But if you did not have the graph, you would have to use your calculations. Now, is that how far away they are? No, we have another step. We know that, we know that each square or each unit on the coordinate plane is 1.5 miles. So the second step that we need to do now is we need to take 7 units and multiply that times 1.5. And that's going to give us how many miles apart they are. So 7 times 1.5, that gives us 10.5. So they are 10.5 miles apart. Okay. So I would like for you to do example B with your table partners. It says a scuba diver found a pink shell and a blue shell at different places along the coral reef shown on the coordinate plane. If each square on the coordinate plane represents 5 yards, how far apart were the two shells? So take a minute or two and get that one done. So first thing we want to do is write our ordered pairs. So let's use P and B for pink and blue. So the pink shell is at 10, comma, and look at what we're counting by tens here. So this is +10, comma, -15. So this is 10, comma, -15. And the blue shell is at 10, comma, -25. So 10, comma, -25. All right, so again, here's the X value, here's the Y value, okay? The ones that are the same, that's the X value. So that means we're not going to use the X value to calculate, we're going to use the Y values, okay? Now, going back to our coordinate plane, you see that the pink shell and the blue shell are in the same quadrant. So if we're in the same quadrant, what are we going to do? We are going to subtract. Subtract the absolute values. Okay? So we've got, let's see, the absolute value of -15 minus the absolute value of negative 25. Now, in this case, I think we would want to subtract the big minus the little, okay? Big number minus a little number. So let me just rewrite this. So let's write the absolute value of negative 25 minus the absolute value of negative 15. So that's going to give us 25 minus 15, which gives us 10 units. And if you look over here, you can see again we're counting by fives. That's 5, 10. That's 10 units apart. Okay? Now, that big minus little thing, that is something that you should make sure you can subtract the big minus little, especially when you're subtracting. Big minus little. Okay? And now it says that if each square on the coordinate plane represents 5 yards, how far apart were they? Well, now we need to take that 10 and we need to multiply that times the 5 yards. So this tells us that those two shells were 50 yards apart. Alright, so for example C, it says Fritz and Manolo like to skateboard together at a nearby park. They want to determine who has to walk a farther distance to get to the park. So they graph the location on the coordinate plane with the city's main square at the origin. The coordinates for each location are shown in the table. Each unit represents a city block. Who has to walk a farther distance to get to the park? So on this one, we have to do two calculations. We need to decide what's the distance from Fritz's house to the park, and then we want to find the distance between Manolo's house to the park. Okay? So let's start with Fritz. So we're going from Fritz's house, so that's F, let's say that, and that's negative 2, comma 2. And then the park, P, is at 3, comma 2. Okay? And again, this is X, comma Y. Now, you can see that the Y values here are the same. The Y values are the same. So we're going to use the X values to calculate. Now, are we going to add or subtract? Well, we have to find out, are we in the same quadrant or are we in different quadrants? So let's see. Sketch our graph over here. So we've got negative 2, comma positive 2. So negative, comma positive is up here. That's in quadrant 2. That's where Fritz's house is. And then the park is at positive 3, positive 2. So the park is in the first quadrant. So that means we are in different quadrants. That means we want to add the absolute values. Okay, so we've got the absolute value of negative 2 plus the absolute value of 3. So that's 2 plus 3, which is equal to 5 units. Now, it says here that each unit represents a city block. So 5 units, we can just say that's 5 blocks. So Fritz, this is for Fritz, his house is 5 blocks away from the park. So now we have to figure out Manolo's. Okay, so let's use M for Manolo. So M for Manolo, so Manolo is at 3, comma negative 4, and again the park is at 3, comma 2. All right, so again this is X and Y, X, comma Y. The ordered pairs, or coordinates that are the same for Manolo's house is the x, okay? So we're not going to use the x to calculate. We are going to use the y to calculate, okay? Now, we need to know, are we in the same quadrant or are we in different quadrants? So let's see, sketch our graph over here. So Manolo's house, that's positive 3, comma, negative 4. That's down here in the fourth quadrant. And then we've got positive 3, comma, positive 2. That's where the park is. So again, we have different quadrants, so we're going to add the absolute value. All right, so we want to add the absolute values. So this is going to be for Manolo. Wait, we've got absolute value of negative 4 plus the absolute value of 2. So that's 4 plus 2, which is 6 blocks. Remember, it said every unit is a block. So 6 blocks, and this is for Manolo. So now, you guys, we have to answer our question. The question was, who has to walk farther distance to get to the park? And of course, between 5 blocks and 6 blocks, who has a farther walk? Manolo, right. So Manolo has to walk farther. Make sure you always answer your final question, okay? And that's it. And now you have time to work on your homework, which is in the textbook, page 253, and this is 1 through 9 all.